It's almost as if you have to be a degenerate or a willfully participant of sin in order to make it anywhere in this world nowadays. It's almost like if you're not adhering to certain frames of thought and ideologies, you're going to be put on a list of ostracized, you're going to be targeted, maybe even gang stalked, etc. And it's not really hard to believe, and it's getting to the point now especially where it's not hard to believe that we're in the end of times. And so the reason for that is I got the Bible here, and we're going to read exactly what Jesus described to the disciples, because the disciples came, and this is from Matthew 24, 4 through 13, if anybody wants to take a look at this and read along. But Jesus is asked by the disciples, what is the sign of thy coming, okay? And we're going to read this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go through and see how this is mirroring what exactly is going on in our society today. So he says, take heed that no man shall deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, and see thou that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet near. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. All these things are the beginnings of sorrow. So they're the beginning of sorrow, right? All of these things are the beginning of sorrow. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and they shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Those are all Jesus's words. And it really goes to show, I think World War I, World War II could be a sign of the beginning of sorrows here. And the reason for that is because that's exactly what the wars and the rumors of wars are. And it's getting to the point now to, apparently now, if Trump gets elected into the office for the United States election, he's basically promising a war with Iran at this point. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this or even know about it, but that is the case, and he's putting Israel first. So because Israel is going to be put first, we're not putting America first here in the United States. I mean, it's the president of the United States, right? Not the president of Israel. And it's not necessarily that I don't want to see other nations not thrive. I want to see everybody thrive and live as luxuriously as possible. But it's almost as if Trump is now catering to Israel for some reason. And I'm just putting this out here. I'm just a guy trying to spread the word of God and trying to make sense of the world just as much as anybody else, okay? And I got a good idea of what's going on, and I'm not going to get too, all wooey and conspiracy-like here, but it does seem like Donald Trump is going back on a lot of what he's promised and what he originally was standing for. The 2016 Trump is definitely not the same, and any person as the 2024 Trump, and anybody that thinks differently, I think you're not really seeing things, and you're living in the past, or you're living with hopes of the future that is not exactly the reality. And this is coming from somebody that I don't like. Kamala, however you pronounce her name. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but I don't like Harris either. I don't think she's going to do any good for the country. I think we're either way in this nation, in the United States specifically, we're going to have famine, or we're going to have tyranny, or we're going to have both. And I don't think that Donald Trump is necessarily going to be the tyrant that a lot of the people on the left think that he's going to be, but I also don't think that Harris is going to be the shining star example of democracy that a lot of people on the left are hoping to be. And so it's almost like when Jesus says nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, I can see that almost internally as well, because it's almost as if there's a lot of nations around the world that are starting to crumble internally. I do consultations with everybody around the world. I've had consultations with people in over 20 different countries by now, and I can say with absolute certainty that this is not just a United States issue. This is a global issue. And ever since 2020, I've been having apocalyptic dreams. And I used to think that it was just a coincidence. I used to think that I was just kind of losing my marbles a little bit. And that only happened for a few months before I started to see the fruits of certain dreams bear out. For example, in 2020, I had a dream that an invisible ball of death would be coming down into the land and put everybody in their homes until the winter months. Well, what happened? And this was in January and February of 2020, so it was a month and a half, 2 months before the actual lockdowns. And I've had other prophetic dreams throughout the last 4 years, and anybody that follows Christ, I genuinely think that they're going to have an understanding of what it means to be prophetic, because the Holy Spirit is guiding you in a way, and the Holy Spirit is moving you in a direction to where you're going to be able to start to notice certain patterns. And it's almost like a spiritual skill that you'll be able to develop, is these prophetic abilities of sorts. Because there is, in the Bible, there talks a lot about prophecy, and I think that it is important to be mindful of who you're listening to as far as prophecy, because the best person to go to is going to be you. It's going to be it's going to be the inner world that is going to be most trustworthy for you, because it's going to be your relationship with Christ that ultimately is going to be able to bring out the most change. And so when Jesus says here, many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many, you've got to have the discernment to say that. And I'm not claiming to be a prophet. I'm just saying that there have been times where I've seen prophetic things happen, and even in relationships, it's almost like, and I'm not talking about just men and women, I'm talking about business relationships, I'm talking about just out in the community, wherever you go. I can tell based off of the interactions that I have with people exactly what kind of relationship I'm going to have down the line. For example, within the first 5 minutes, if I ask a few certain questions and gauging from the person's responses to those questions, I can get a spiritual idea of what's going on in them and with them internally. So, for example, I'll use this relationship example with a woman. I could sense that her throat chakra, her energy center in her throat, because I do think that there are something to chakras, and I don't think it's necessarily the Hindu or the Eastern religion that is necessarily right. It's more like they tapped into an energy center, because what I think the chakras are, and from my understanding of what nerve endings are in those places of the chakras, is that it's a concentrated center for nervous endings and nervous systems to really gauge at those internal organs that are going on. And so when I'm interacting with a person, I can almost gauge their energy through their chakras and through my own chakras. I was talking to this woman, and it was very clear that the word Jesus, the name Jesus, was something that it was almost like God was not welcome with her. She did not want to hear the truth. She didn't want to accept the truth and swallow the pill of truth. And I could sense that. And so I pretty much told her that we were not really compatible, and I soft nexted her. And she got pretty upset, and I actually saw her in some dreams. and she was trying to ask me why I left exactly, because she didn't know why we weren't compatible. And in the dream, I told her that we basically just don't see what really is together. I see what is, but you don't. And sure enough, just a week or two later, a similar conversation like that occurred. And it wasn't in those exact words, but it was definitely those similar feelings and emotions that came up. So even within your personal relationships or your business relationships, certain dreams that you have, and of course you got to be mindful whether it's from the devil or whether it's from God, but certain dreams that you have can be prophetic. And so the best way to discern if it's a false prophet is going to be if you can actually have that discernment inside for yourself. Now, when Jesus says, "For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, there shall be famines, pestilences, earthquakes, in divers places." Well, basically what he's saying there is that not only is the internal structure going to collapse and the external structure going to collapse, but the abnormality of the weather and Mother Nature herself is going to be disrupted entirely. And what have we seen over the past 20 years of the propaganda that we've seen with climate change? I don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of the people that are seeing what's going on with Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton and everything, there's of course a lot of quote-unquote conspiracies on how government can change the weather. And I'm not going to say or disclose that I think this is true or I don't think it's true. I'm simply going to say, at least on YouTube anyway, because this is going to be posted on YouTube, X, and Rumble, etc. But it's almost as if the propaganda that we've seen is exactly what the devil's trying to do. The devil's trying to almost force us into this climate change, and I think God is going to make it actually happen. He's gonna be like a jujitsu. He's gonna be doing some spiritual jujitsu and completely switch it around. And I don't know, this is just something that I foresee. But when he also says that many shall be offended and shall betray one another and shall hate one another, well, what's most important in the last days, we've got to look to God's people. And I probably wanted to talk more about this at the beginning, but we have to look at God's people if we're going to really understand if we are in the last days. Because if God's people are betraying one another or hating one another or being offended by one another, that's when we really know that we're in the last days, I think. Because it's not going to be the degenerates. Degenerates are going to be degenerate. Degenerates are degenerate. The depleted coomers are depleted coomers. The whores are the whores. They're going to be who they're going to be, okay? But if godly people start acting a specific way, that's when, towards one another, that's when I think we'll be seeing a little bit more of the potential loving that is waxed cold, which leads me to what Jesus says here. He says, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. I mean, we're seeing that. We pretty much live in a loveless society, and you cannot have love without God. And I know that because of the way that I grew up. There was neither God nor love in the household or the environment that I was in. And I'm not trying to be complaining or anything like that. I'm just saying that I know what it's like to neither feel love nor God. And even me myself, for many years, I didn't believe in God for that reason. And now I know that I don't need to believe. I don't need to believe in God. I can simply, because I think faith and belief are two different things. To believe and to have faith, you can believe, for example, that these trees behind me are purple, or you can believe that they're blue, but that doesn't make it so. But if I have faith in something, I'm having faith in an action. I'm doing something about what I'm hoping to increase the probability of seeing happen. And so I'm doing something about it, and I'm having faith in it. It's kind of like starting a business, or it's like starting your own, even creating something, just creating a painting or anything like that. Sometimes you have to just kind of go and move through the darkness until you find that spark and that creation. You kind of don't really know where you're going until you end up where you're needing, until where you're needing to go. So these are just a few things that come to mind, and a lot of the deceit that's going on as well in relationships and just within our society in general, and all of the scams that we're going through. People are being lied to at a fundamental level. They're being gaslit at a fundamental level, and then they're being told to suck it up and pay up or else. And it's absolutely bizarre that we're letting it go on this long. I mean, the only thing that I can think about of doing is to start our own communities, and obviously that takes resources, and it takes a certain amount of wealth at this point, because we live in a system that is intentionally trying to screw you over every single corner you take. And so you've got to kind of play the game to get out of the game a little bit. And that's exactly what I'm striving to do. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. So with all that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful. And I hope this also gave you something to think about in the long run. But I want to thank everybody that's been moving over to the X and Rumble platform over from YouTube here. I also want to appreciate and give a shout out to everybody in the Regal Change Academy, everybody in the paid and the Discord community. So the Discord community is free, and if you want to join that, there's a link in the description box below. You can also join the Regal Change Academy in the description box below. There'll be a link to that as well. And basically what you're going to be getting in the paid that you're not going to get in the Discord is weekly group calls and way more resources available. We've already got free resources in the Discord, but we're going to give you more resources and more tools in the paid academy. And I also want to announce that we're doing a 7 Deadly Sins course and classes, where really this is going to be like a class, and it's going to be over a duration of 7 weeks. We're going to have 1 class a week for each sin on the 7 Deadly Sins. And there's going to be a reading for Dante's Inferno each week. We're going to be participating in group discussions, and this is going to be a really good overall establishment and understanding to get more at the root of why industries are trying to target certain sins against you, etc. So with all that being said, if you do want to sign up for that, registration is by October 21st. The first class is October 19th. So the reason we're having the registration go a little bit over is just so that people can get an idea of what's going to be inside and get more of an understanding before they fully commit. Because I want to make sure that everybody's going to get the most out of this. And I'm somebody that, you know, I just want to see people grow closer to God and really move in a good direction, because I understand that we just might be in the last days, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got to be mindful, and we've got to stay vigilant out here. So with all that being said, peace be with you, and may the grace of Jesus be with you all. Till next time.